To start off, I'd like to say that I'm a female, and I'm 30 years old. This happened to me when I was 14, and I'll never forget it. It was summertime, and I was visiting my cousin in Orlando, Florida. I was to stay with her the entire summer break, and occasionally go see my dad, who wasn't too far away. During the stay at her place, I'd met a lot of her friends who were about 4 to 5 years older than me. One of her friends, who we'll call Denise, was really cool, and she had a few younger sisters and younger brothers who really liked to hang out with me. So one day my cousin says that we were invited by Denise for a sleepover, and I couldn't have been more excited because my aunt's house was always so hot, and to be honest, kind of a little boring. We packed a little bag and headed over to Denise's house. Before I go on, my parents had no clue where I was. I didn't even know where I was. I wasn't really familiar with the area, and I didn't pay any attention to the surroundings on the drive over. To continue, we arrive at Denise's house, and again, she had sisters and a brother who I actually found out were her half-siblings, and they lived with their mom and dad, which was Denise's stepdad. The first night there, they took us to the movies, the mall, and then when we got home, they ordered us some food for us to eat. Denise's parents were extremely friendly, so I began to trust them almost immediately. I know, stupid kid. Anyway, that night was a real blast, and we had stayed up really late, laughing all night long. The next morning, we all woke up, and we then had some cereal and went about our day. Again, having lots of fun, playing in the pool in the backyard, and staying up late. I had started to worry about not packing enough clothes, as I thought we would just be there for the weekend. But my cousin then told me we'd be going home the next day. When the next day came, I was all packed up and ready to go. But I was told we would be getting picked up later in the day, which was fine, as I was having a lot of fun being there. Denise's stepdad went to the store and came back with a lot of oysters and a lot of beer. Then only a few moments later, a few of his friends came by, all older men like himself, probably around the age of 40 and up. I immediately began to feel uncomfortable, but I just stayed away from them. I would occasionally walk past them, and they would all be staring at me. I was a bit on the chubby side, so I kinda had a little bit of meat on my body, and I guess they liked that. They were all standing around eating and drinking, sweating bullets. My cousin warned me to stay away from them, as they were all drunk and could potentially harm me in some way, if you know what I mean. So I did just that, again, making as little interaction as possible. I found myself outside looking for my cousin at some point, and I didn't know where she ran off to. So I went inside the house, and as I'm walking down a really long hallway towards the kid's bedroom, Denise's stepdad came out of his bedroom. I knew he was a little drunk, so I was kind of nervous. I gave a really nervous smile, and I attempted to walk past him. He kind of just stood there, blocking my way to the bedroom. I laughed nervously and tried to squirm past him, but he then grabbed both of my wrists with his hands, squeezing extremely tightly to the point where I was frozen with fear, and I started to cry. He held my wrist there for what seemed like an eternity, and the pain got worse, and I could only think one thing. This guy was going to do something to me. Finally, I heard a voice calling out for me, and I then realized it was my cousin. I was still in such shock that I couldn't respond, but when he realized she was looking for me, he immediately let me go. I then ran out to my cousin in tears, and I asked when we were leaving, and she said her mom was on the way. When she asked me why I was crying, I just told her I wanted to go home. She didn't realize how red my wrists were at the time, but I could clearly see that it was super visible. When my aunt arrived to pick us up, I walked out of the house looking for Denise's stepdad, so I wouldn't get too close to him. I caught him staring at me, not even looking away when my eyes met his. It was almost like he was still thinking of what he was going to do with me. I was sick to my stomach all over again. Thankfully, I had made it out of this situation without becoming a victim of some sort. I don't remember where Denise's mom was. I believe she was working that day. I don't know what her stepdad's intentions were, but I have a pretty good idea of what he may have been thinking. It took me years to share this story. The shock from what happened will always remain part of me. I wanted to share this because maybe all the young listeners out there will learn something from this. Or maybe parents who have young kids will start being more careful of whose house they spend the night at. It may not be the worst story, but it was an absolutely horrifying experience. I really consider myself lucky. I'm from London, and the story took place back in August of last year. I'm 14 now, but I was 13 years old at the time, and during the summer holidays, I would always have a sleepover with my best friend because her birthday was during that month. I had been sleeping at her house for a couple of days now. The day was her birthday, and I was going to be going back home the next day, and so we decided to go out at 10 p.m. just when the sun had started to set. We went to go get some dinner at a fish and chip shop. As we were walking there, on our way we were listening to some music on my phone. As I was waiting for her, I had looked around our surroundings. We were on a road opposite a park, only a few minutes away from the shop. I could see it from afar, but when I had then turned around to face the park, I had spotted a man who looked like he was in his mid-40s. He was sitting in a white van parked beside a children's park and just staring at me and my friend. When he realized I was staring at him, he waved at me and he gave me this sickening grin. So I pointed him out to my friend, and at first, we didn't really think too much of it. We just thought it was weird. Only a second later, he repeated the action, so we ignored him and we just decided to carry on and get to the shop. Once we had gotten our food, we were joking about the man, calling him a weirdo, and laughing about the whole situation. Then as we're about to walk past the park, on our way back again, we started joking to each other, saying, "What if he's still there waiting for us?" Once we got into the park, our laughs soon died down, as we then realized we were correct. That same man was just sitting still, parked right there in the children's park. Once he had noticed us, he kinda just glared at us with the same creepy, sinister grin as before. We ignored him and we just started walking back to her house. I turned around just to check if he was still staring at us, but he had already turned the engine of his van on and had slowly started driving behind me and my friend. I alerted her of the situation almost immediately, and she started shaking because she already kinda feared something like this would happen. I looked at my phone to see if I could call anyone, but it was only at 2%. So we then tried to act as if we didn't even notice him following us, and just carried on walking back. But then right then, he sped up, so that now he was driving right beside us. He had started trying to speak to us, saying things like,
"Oh, what are you guys carrying? Where are y'all going?"
and saying things like that. My friend then whispered in my ear that she was going to run to the end of the road, as his car wouldn't be able to go around the corner, and she said that I should go with her. I told her that I wasn't going to run with her, and that I was going to carry on walking. I honestly had no idea what was going on in my head at that moment. I guess if it was fight or flight, she chose flight, and I chose fight. I was trying to remain calm and think more rationally instead of panicking. So she ran and waited for me at the end of the road. Now that she had ran, the man had turned his full attention towards me, and he said that he wasn't going to hurt me, and if I could just stop for a minute so he could get out of his car and speak to me. But obviously I wasn't falling for that. He then kept asking me questions like where did I live, how old I am, where I'm headed to, etc. I just ignored him and kept walking, not daring to look at him, and I just pretended he wasn't there. He had started to get annoyed as I wasn't answering him, so he sped up his van and he tried to block the road so I couldn't move past him. I was petrified. He then took off his seatbelt and went to exit his van. So as quickly as I could, I sped as fast as I could right around his vehicle and over to my friend. We then both ran and hid behind the corner. Now, for whatever reason, he had parked his van in the middle of the road, I guess waiting to see where we were. He went to get out of his van, but he must have figured we were gone by that time, and he drove off after that. Once we watched him drive off, we bolted back to her house and told her mom everything that happened. She saw the panic in our eyes, so she knew we weren't lying. She asked us if we had gotten a picture of the license plate, but we hadn't. So the mom said she would go back there with us so that we could take a picture to give to the police. As we were walking back, I couldn't believe my eyes. This man in his creepy-ass van actually returned to the children's park, and he was just watching all the kids. It was so sickening. Once we had gotten a picture of the license plate, he got out of his car and started to follow us again, but now on foot. But when my friend's mom saw this, she then rushed over to us and ushered us away. When he saw we were with an adult, he slowly got back in his car and acted like nothing ever happened. We called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was long gone at that point. I honestly wish I could say that it ended there, but it didn't. Well, a few days ago I was scrolling through the news just to see if I could find out anything involving this man. And I did. A little boy was followed home by the exact same man. He was driving the same exact car, same description, everything. And it all happened in the same exact place, right near that children's park. It makes me feel absolutely disgusting knowing that he's out there trying to still kidnap kids. It's been about 6 months since all this happened, and he hasn't been caught. We really do live in a messed up world. I hate it. I'm a 20-year-old female, but this happened when I was 13. I was staying the night at my ex-best friend's house. We were best friends at the time, but not anymore. I'll call her T for this story. I was always a big girl and had a lot of force. I always gave T piggyback rides. That'll be important in the story. It was around 3 p.m. when we got bored with painting. On that day, we were working on an art project, and we were partners. I don't really remember now what it was for though. This was on a Saturday, and we wanted to finish our project and not do it at last minute. We had a history of doing that kind of a lot. T had the idea to walk to the park that was close to her house, and she thought it was a good idea to bring her golden retriever puppy named Marley along with us. T's mom wasn't home at this time because she was always doing grocery shopping, and so T thought it was better that her mom wasn't home. We ended up getting ready, and we left at around 3:30 p.m. I will now tell you about the outline from T's house to the park. Now, T's house was on the right, a big white house, and it had 2 floors and a big driveway. From where T's house was, if you walked straight for 12 minutes, you had to cross the road, and then you would reach the park. It was a sunny day with some clouds as me and T crossed the road and we reached the park. The park was pretty huge, but most of the time it was empty because I live in a small unknown town in Washington State, and I barely see anyone there unless it's a baseball or soccer game or someone having a birthday party in the picnic areas. So anyways, me and T went pretty far into the park, and we had played on the playground with Marley for almost 2 hours. But I had noticed a car driving around a few times. It was a grayish 2012 Chevy Impala. I knew this because my dad had taught me the names of models and cars, and it had started to really bother me seeing this car. I told T what I saw, and she said, "Yeah, I'd noticed that car circling around us a lot. Do you think they want to take us or something?" She gave me a concerned look, and I replied back with, "Well, it sure seems like it. I think we should leave now. I'm starting to get freaked out." Me and T got off the playground and went to go grab Marley. While we put on his leash, I saw the same car circle around us, but this time it went slower. I felt my blood go cold as I looked at the driver, and it was an old white man. He looked like he was in his 50s, and he had a smirk on his face. He was wearing glasses too, and he was staring right at us. T had noticed the car go farther away from us, and this was our chance to run out of there. In this park, there was a big amount of trees, and me and T were hiding behind this huge tree, with T holding Marley. The car came back, but this time it was speeding. After it passed us, we then ran as fast as we could. We ran across the baseball fields and soccer fields that were in the park entrance. My lungs felt as if they were going to give out on how fast I was going. T was behind me, gripping onto Marley for dear life. I grabbed T's hand, pulling her forward. Luckily, there were no cars on the road, so we kept going. T then screamed as she saw the same car from behind us. We ran into a neighbor's yard, and we saw the old man actually stop his car and run behind us. I was screaming in my head at this point, "Don't get caught! Please don't get caught!" T was falling behind, and the old man was so close to us at this point. Now, T was super tiny. She was always very tiny like that from what I remembered. So I literally scooped her up with Marley in her hands, and I never ran so fast in my life. The adrenaline kicked in so hard that day. I can still feel the burning in my lungs at this very moment. I decided not to run to T's house and instead confuse the old man. So I went in front of a house and I hid behind a bush. I then put T down while we saw the old man go behind another house, and when it was finally clear and we didn't see him, we ran straight all the way to T's house, locking the door behind us. T's mom still wasn't home yet, and we never told her. Not even to this day or any authorities, because we were really scared we'd get in trouble. However, luckily we never saw that old man again. Even to this day, I still sometimes get nightmares about that scary old man grabbing us and taking us away. But thank God that didn't happen.